Hi, I'm Laura Jane Grace from Against Me, and you are live in Limbo.
Hi there, folks. This is Katrina from Live in Limbo signing in with the one and only Laura Jane Grace. Thanks for joining us today, Laura.
Thank you for having me.
So how's your day been so far?
No complaints at all.
Oh, glad to hear it. Hopefully after this interview, we'll make it even better. So, Laura, I'm going to start off by first congratulating you on the incoming release of your autobiography. That is such an accomplishment, and I'm so proud of you because to be able to write a book is an incredible feat.
Thank you. Yeah, writing a book is very hard, it turns out. Yeah.
For sure. So I just wanted to start off by asking about the title of the book itself. So your book is called Tranny, Confessions of Punk Rock's Most Infamous Anarchist Sellout. And there's a lot of strong words used in that title itself. So I'm just wondering, what was the genesis of that title, and why did you choose to use such strong words in there?
I guess it's important to make clear that I loathe that word. I hate that word. So there's a certain amount of word reclamation with choosing it as a title. There's a certain amount of going ahead and saying all the worst things someone could say about you with the subtitle included in that too. I've been called a sellout more times in my life than I can count. But I wrote a pretty long column for Noisy. I write a column for Noisy that goes in depth explaining it. But those are the kind of major 2 points with it. But I think if you read the book, it would make sense too. So.
Sure. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to reading it. So I've read in the past that you found songwriting to be a very therapeutic process. Did you find writing the book to be a similar process?
Yes, but it was more it was weird because doing a book, finishing a book and finishing a record at the same time, I think will age you by about 2-3 decades. And with doing the book, songwriting kind of became my distraction from my responsibilities with the book, where it was oh, I've got this deadline to hand in a couple chapters. Maybe I'll just pick up my acoustic guitar and work on a song. But in that way, they were kind of different therapies, where one was really dealing with the therapy of the present, and the other was kind of more reconciling the past and dealing with the therapy of the past.
Are you scared at all for the release of your book?
Totally terrified.
I find I write music as well sometimes, not nearly as good as you in any way, but I find when I'm writing lyrics, a lot of the times I'm talking about my own experiences, but because there's not as much time, I can leave space to be vague within it. Whereas when I'm writing about myself in particular, you have to give all the context, you have to give exactly what's going on. So are you worried about that at all?
Sure, yeah. I mean, that's the thing about music is that, even if you are being autobiographical with music, listeners take music and adapt it to themselves, and if they like something, usually it's because they identify with it, and I'm not sure that's necessarily the same with books, maybe to some extent, but an autobiography is an autobiography, there's no hiding behind any kind of metaphor. And do you keep a journal? Do you journal at all? Right.
It's tough, though. It's very tough.
So would you voluntarily let people read your journal? Right. So that's what I'm essentially doing, which is terrifying. Yeah. So.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people, myself included, are excited to see what you've shared with us and very grateful that you've taken the time in order to do that. Was there a certain moment, a certain catalyst when you realized, I want to take my writings and I want to share them with people, even though it might be a scary thing at times?
I guess it kind of became a point of of having too much weight to carry, both metaphorically in an existential way, and also then in a literal way of I've kept journals since I was 8 years old, so that's boxes and boxes and boxes full of just notebooks that every time I've moved I've had to haul around and find someplace to hide. So the idea of going through them all and kind of cataloging them in an official way, I plan on burning them all now, so that you won't have to carry them around anymore.
So does that mean that in a couple years' time, when you have a couple more journals, you might expect a sequel?
We'll see what happens. Let's get the first book out, and then we'll take it from there. Yeah.
So you've accomplished a lot of things. You have multiple best-selling records, rather. You've toured all over the world. You have a book coming out. What else is left on your bucket list? What else do you want to accomplish in life?
I don't know. I feel there's so much. I feel that's kind of like the goal of the artist, is you're like trying to always like create that perfect piece of art. And I still have drive, and I'm still pretty like self-deprecating in that I like that people appreciate stuff I've made, but I still feel like I can always do better, you know?
Well, I guess that's the only way we can get better, and that's how we have that drive.
Yeah.
Is there any venue or any place or country in the world that you want to one day play that you haven't done yet?
Oh, I mean, that's like, you know, part of being in a band is
Yeah.
like that kind of like conquest of going to new lands, and like there are still many countries we've never played, and this past year, you know, we were able to go to a couple places we had never been to, and I really hope to continue that. You know, like never played in Africa anywhere, never been to Russia,
Yeah.
never been to mainland China,
Yeah.
never been to like so many places, never been to South America. We went to Mexico City for the first time this last year, but yeah.
Is that the 2017, 2018 plan, hopefully? Can we tell the people who are fans in Africa and in China and Russia that one day they will see you in person?
One day
Okay.
you will see us in person.
There's a promise made right there. Okay. So I guess my next question for you is, in your latest album, Transgender Dysphoria Blues, rather, it's very obvious when you're speaking about the dysphoria and the issues that affect transgender people. Whereas in the past, a lot of your lyrics might have been more veiled. So my question to you is, before you came out, before you told everybody about your true personality, was it difficult to sing those songs, or was it therapeutic to sing those songs, knowing that there was a true meaning behind it, but people didn't necessarily know what they were?
It was more just surprising, like, you know, to like look at yourself from a removed perspective of thinking like, wow, like when I was fucking 15 years old, I never could have imagined this, you know, or like to kind of like confront your fears and then have them celebrated in this strange way was like just like something I could have never thought, you know.
Do you ever find, though, that because you're singing the same songs every night, that because although the lyrics are based in so much therapy and so much truth for you, that they sometimes start to lose some of their meaning to you?
No, it's more that the meaning changes, you know, and oftentimes like if a song loses meaning, we just stop playing it.
Yeah.
But like there's some songs I've been playing since I was like 17 years old where it, like I'm continually finding new meaning in them.
Well, that's really nice to hear. What's an example of a song that has specifically really changed its meaning for you in the past few years?
You know, I guess like a song like Pints of Guinness Make You Strong, which is the first song on our first full-length record. You know, I wrote that song for my grandmother, whose name was Evelyn. She passed away in like 2001, and I named my daughter after my grandmother. And so now when I'm on stage and I sing, you know, like Evelyn, I'm not coming home tonight, like I think of my daughter, you know. I think of my grandmother too, but I think of my daughter, you know.
One other question for you. There's been a lot of horrible stuff happening in the world lately, and I'm a big believer that music is a strong force in being able to create a discourse and create change, and hopefully create the change that's needed to make those differences. What do you think it is about music that has that power to create that conversation? Why do people rally around it, and why is it able to create those conversations?
Because music is universal. I mean, like, music is like a universal language, as cliche as that sounds, you know, like, there has never been a society without music. It's always there. It's like just as important as food, just as important as air. I think that, you know, you can say things literally in music that it's not that you're saying it, it's like the impact of it hits people, like regardless of whether or not they understand the language. And that's something I've seen demonstrated time and time again by touring to different places where it's like, okay, you're touring in a foreign country where they don't speak English, but they still understand exactly what you're saying when you're singing the song.
Whenever you're touring those foreign countries, you try to learn a couple lines in the other language, or do you rely on the emotions of the songs themselves to carry the meaning through?
I mean, I always try to learn, you know, everywhere I go, and I think it's only polite when you're traveling in a different country to like try and take in as much as you can of that. You know, it only benefits you. That being said, like, I only wish I knew more, you know?
Well, you have some Italian and some Spanish, you were saying, so do you ever use that, pull that out when you're over in that part of the world?
I do. I know, well, in German too, I know ein Bier bitte, zwei Bier bitte, drei Bier bitte.
They're very key phrases, yeah. Well, you've been in the news a bit lately because you're been connected with a certain Canadian songstress who we're very proud as well. Would you be willing to talk about that a little bit and how you guys met?
Yeah, I mean, what do you want to know?
Well, yeah, how did you guys meet?
He invited me to a show.
Yeah. Was it a show in Toronto, over in
Chicago.
Chicago, okay. Well, I know there's been a lot of Americans who joke about starting to date or marry Canadians in order to get away in case a certain reality TV star becomes president.
I was telling Beatrice how it's like a total cliche for Americans, like especially when you're younger, to be like, oh yeah, I have a girlfriend, she's Canadian, you wouldn't know her. Like I swear she exists. So.
And she actually does exist now, so there you go. We're changing cliches from cliche into an actual truth.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time with us, Laura. I'm so excited to hear your upcoming albums, to read your book, and just thank you for being a constant beacon for everybody within the community, for showing that sometimes it's good to show who you are inside, because it's not healthy and not safe to hold that back. So thank you very, very much.
Right on. My pleasure. Yeah.
Thanks.